Okay, people, so the two terms that I need you guys to go and learn. I'm gonna zoom in a bit here. Let's make it a bit more bold. The first one is called mod. Okay, and the next word we have is called div. Let me maybe write it caps. Okay, so mod and div. Okay, let me add one more. Let me add integer. Okay, so we'll start with the first one. Okay, what is an integer? If you think about plain mathematics, okay, so an integer in mathematics is any whole number that does not have a decimal value. Okay, so an integer is basically just a whole number. Okay, it does not have a decimal value. So examples of integers is something like 2, it is 4, it can be 10, it can be -10, it can be 100, it can be 1,000, it can be any whole number that does not have a decimal. Okay, so would 2.4 be an integer?
No, sir.
No, because it's not a whole number, it has a decimal value. So an integer is any number that does not have a decimal added to it, so it's a whole number. Okay, and that is what we call an integer. Okay, the next two functions, the mod and div, will only work with integers. Okay, that means your numbers that you will be using with these two functions, if it's two inputs or if it's an output, everything will be of a integer data type. Okay, so let me say here, only work with integers. Okay, so if we look at mod in mathematics, I don't know if you've heard the word modulus before. I'll take that as a no. Okay, so
we did, sir.
did you guys? Okay, so tell me, what is mod then? Modulus or mod? Anything?
No, sir.
Okay, let me then explain it quickly. Okay, so what modulus or mod is it is basically a division. Okay, so it divides two integers, or let me say it basically divides the first integer with the second integer, and it only shows the remainder in an integer value. Okay, so what this means is there's two integers that gets divided, but it only shows the remainder. I'm gonna explain it a bit better in a second. Okay, so for instance, if we have 2 mod 4, no, let's have 4 mod 2. Okay, what would the answer here be? If you have your the rule says divide the first integer, so 4, with the second integer, so that actually means 4 divided by 2, and it only shows the remainder in an integer value. So what is the remainder if you say 4 divided by 2?
It's 2, sir.
2.
Is everyone saying 2?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so maybe I don't know if maybe I'm not clear. So what does a remainder mean?
Left over.
Something that's left over. Okay. So if we have 4, you divide it by 2. So you're going to say, okay, let's see how many times does 2 go into 4. It goes into it 2, 4, so 2 times. And is there anything left over? Is there anything remaining?
No, sir. It's nothing.
So it's a 0 then, sir.
There's nothing. So that should be a 0 then.
Yeah, I see.
Any questions?
No, sir, I understand now.
Okay, let me do it again. If I say, let's take 9. If we say 9 mod 2, what would my answer be?
1, sir.
1, sir.
Yeah, 1, sir.
Okay, everyone agrees it's 1. Okay,
Yes.
why? If you go and count and you say it's 2, 4, 6, 8, now the next one is 10, but 10 is not equal to 9, so it's greater. But 8 is also not 9, so that means 9 is somewhere between the 10 and the 8. So then you just say, okay, well, it goes into a 2, 4, 6, 8, so that's 4 times. So there's 8 that goes into it fully. So how many is remainder? So the 9 minus the 8 will give you the remainder of 1. If we take another example, like 21 mod 3, what would my answer be here?
0.
It's 0, sir.
0, because again you go 3, 6, 9, 8, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. Okay, so that is 7 times. So there's no remainder, so that's why it's a 0. Okay, if we have something like 15 mod 4, what would my answer be?
3.
3, sir.
Okay, everyone agrees it's 3, because why? If we go and say, okay, well, that's 4, let me maybe, so 4, 8, 12, then we get to 13, 14, 15, 16, so 16 should have been the next one, but we can't complete the 4. So how many is left over? So what is 15 minus 12? You are stuck with only 3, so 3 is left. So it can go into it 3 times, and then there's a remainder of 3. So that is how mod works. It only shows the remainder. So what is left after the division? Okay, on a calculator, the steps you would take is you would just literally say, let's see the 15 mod 4, you would say 15, divide it with 4, and that will give you an answer of 3 comma something, 3 comma dot 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 75. Okay, yeah, that's actually freaking easy. It's 4, so it should be a 3/4. So 3,75. Okay, then you say, okay, what's the next step? Okay, let's see how many whole or how many complete groups of 4 was taken out. So you would say 4 times 3, and you would get the answer of 12. Then you go to your next step and say, okay, let me take my original number, which was the 15. Let's minus my 12, and that will give me the remainder of 3. I know this sounds easy, you can just literally count it, but if you have large numbers, then this is the steps you would take on a calculator. Okay, so calculator steps. Okay, this is obviously if you need to do it manually. If you do it on a computer and you type in this line, it will just give you the answer. Okay, is there any questions about the mod part?
No, sir.
Okay, you understand mod?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, who joined us now? Welcome, Belle. Okay, so I'm just gonna finish up, then I'll run through it again. Okay, the next part we have is div. Okay, so div, if you would think of those 3 words, you can kind of see it would complete the word divide. So div basically means legit just divide. Okay, but the only trick with divide is you are gonna divide divide the first integer with the second integer. So it's almost like the mod. It's divide the first integer with the second integer, but now only displays an integer answer. So that means no decimals. Okay, for instance, if we go and say, okay, so what is 6 div 2? What would that answer be? It would be 3, because why? You take the first one, what is 6 divided by 2? It's 2, 4, 6. It's 3. Okay, let's say you have 5 div 2. What would the answer be here?
Only 2, sir.
2. Okay, why? Because you see, you go 2, 4, and then you say, okay, well now you're stuck between 6 and 4, so it would be 2, 5. That's the actual answer. The actual answer is 2, 5 if you go punch it in on a calculator, but we said no decimals. So we just literally throw the decimal away and we keep only the whole parts or the whole sets we could get out of the first number. Okay, if we take something like 9 div 3, no, let's take 9 div 2, what would we get?
4.
4, sir.
4, sir.
4. Okay, so no commas and we just keep the 4. Okay, next up, if we have 15 div 4, what would we get?
3, sir.
3. Okay, do you all understand? Even though if you go take your calculator and you type in 15 divided with 4, you will get 3,75. But you don't round up or down. You literally just throw the comma away. And that is what the div function do. Okay, all good?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I'm gonna type here.
Yes, sir.
So to do it on a calculator, I'm just gonna say literally, the spelling is bad today. The calculator steps would literally be saying, let's do the last one again, the 15. So it would be 15 divided by with 4. Okay, that will give you an answer of 3,75. Okay, and then the next step is take the whole number and throw away the decimal. Okay, let me go up to the top and re-explain just everything quickly. Okay, so we have an integer. So an integer means it is a whole number that does not have a decimal value. Okay, so that is any whole number. 2, 4, 8, 12, 5, 9, 2, negative 20, any whole number that does not have a decimal value. Okay, so the next two words or functions, mod and div, only works with integers. You will see if we look at an example, the first one, I have an integer on the fore end, or the first number is an integer. I mod it with an integer and I get an integer result. Okay, so you can't have a 4,5 or something mod 2. It will not work. It needs to be an integer every time you have a number inside here. Okay, if we look at the div again, there's an integer in the front. You divide it with an integer and you get an integer answer. Okay, so that means this mod and div only works with integers. You cannot have decimals. Alright, so what is mod? Mod is when you take your first integer, you divide it with your second integer, and you display only the remainder. Okay, so that parts of the division that cannot fully fit into a group. So if we look at an example like 4 mod 2, you would go and say, okay, so how many times can 2 go into 4? It can go in 2, 4, so that's 2 times, and there is no remainder. So the 4 is completely used up, so that's why we say the remainder of 4 mod 2 would be equal to 0. If we look at the number like 9, you would go and say, okay, so how many times can 2 go into 9? It goes in 2, 4, 6, 8. So it can't go in another time because 10 is bigger than 9. So it can go into it 4 times, but we don't write the answer 4. We write down the remainder. So what is the remainder? If it can go into it 4 times, which is equal to 8, from 9 to 8 or 8 to 9, that's 1. So our remainder is 1. What is left over? Only 1. Okay, so that is mod. Then the next step, or the next one, is the div. So div again stands just for simply divide, but only with integers. Okay, so the div function divides the first integer with the second integer and only display an integer answer, so no decimals. You throw the decimals away. So if you look at 6 div 2 is 3, because 2, 4, 6, it is 3 times. If we look at something like 9 div 2, it would be 2, 4, 6, 8, and now you see again the next one is 10. You cannot have another full one, so the last complete package is the fourth one. So 2, 4, 6, 8, so 8 is the last one, so it is 4 times. It can go into it 4 times, so you only write 4 and you do not care about the decimal. You throw it completely away. You do not round up, you do not round down, you throw the decimal away. Okay, all good.
Yes.
So,
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes, question.
So what if you're working with negative numbers?
Okay, so negative numbers should give you also the same type of answer. If you, I've not tested it yet with negative numbers, but it should just give you again the same thing. I think maybe I'll test it out. Your left, if it's a negative, it must also be a negative on the right. Okay, otherwise what I assume the program will do is it will actually just remove the negatives and just see how many times like 2 can go into 4 without a remainder, and display the remainder even though it's negative 4. But I'll test it out and see if it works. I've never actually tried negatives before.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, cool. Alright, so any other questions? Does everyone understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
people,
sir.
so this will be in your test. Integers mod div, it will be in your test. I'm not gonna ask you explain to me what mod and div is. You're gonna have to actually calculate like a sum or something. Okay, so if you learn the explanation like a parrot, that's good. That means you should be able to implement it. If you understand it, fantastic, you will be able to implement it. Okay, so let me just quickly stop